Hi, I'm Michaela and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you just a few plants that, okay, so this is a question that I get from people a lot, and that is like, what are some good rare uncommon plants to start with when I'm looking to get into those kind of plants, but I don't really know where to start. So if you're looking for something that's not super expensive and is a little bit more easygoing to help you kind of ease into figuring out how to care for plants like that, that's what I'm going to show you today. And also, I know it's kind of a whole thing about calling plants rare or uncommon. It's really just intended to mean plants that you may not find at the Lowe's garden center, or maybe a little bit harder to come by, you have to order online. That's kind of what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like endangered plants or anything like that. So, depending on where you live, these may or may not be common or uncommon. It all just varies. I live in Missouri in the US, and these are just kind of uncommon where I am from and the places around me. So most of these you would probably have to go to a more specialty kind of plant shop or just buy it online. The first one is I'm trying out the Walmart grocery pickup, and my order's supposed to be ready in a couple of hours, which is making it hard for me to do anything at all. Is anyone else like that? If you can have one thing scheduled and it can be like 8 hours from now, but it's still hard for you to get anything done because you're like, oh, I've got to do this thing in 8 hours. But anyway, Syngonium Elbow. I love this plant. This is one of my all-time favorites. The variegation is just so pretty, and it's really not a very fussy plant. So you don't have to have this in a greenhouse. You don't necessarily have to have a grow light, and there's a good chance you'll still get really good variegation like this. And it looks really fancy, you know what I mean? So it looks kind of like a Monstera Elbow type of variegation, but it's a lot easier to deal with, and it is a much cheaper price tag. So all in all, I would say this is a much better plant to go for. This one is on my Etsy, and when I was taking pictures of this, my husband was like, wow, that's a photogenic plant if I ever saw one. And when I was taking pictures of it, I was just like stopping and gasping, and I kind of hope this doesn't sell, to be honest, because I mean, this is one of my favorite ones that I've ever grown. These plants I'm not necessarily picking based on price, so I'm not just like listing off cheap uncommon plants, because even if they are cheap, that doesn't necessarily make them easy to deal with. Do you know what I mean? So you could buy something that's kind of cheap, but you'll ultimately be disappointed because it is just a very difficult plant to deal with, or it needs really specific conditions. This is not that. The prices will vary on all of these plants depending on where you live and when you watch this video even. So yeah, just look around, and it's pretty mid-range as far as price goes. I usually sell them for $40 right now. Back in the day though, these used to be very expensive. I don't know if my sentences are coming across very well today. So yeah, Syngonium Elbow. And when you're picking out variegated plants, try to get one that's really balanced and marbly like this. First of all, because it's really pretty. Second, if there are big sections of sectoral variegation all throughout the plant, these are eventually going to just brown and not look very pretty. And similarly, if there's a lot of like mostly green leaves, then it's more prone to reverting. So I mean, this plant has one of each of those leaves, but it's still producing really balanced variegation. But I mean, just look at the plant all together as a whole, not just one leaf or the most recent leaf. Try to look at the whole plant and see if you can see you can't on this one, any variegation on the stem that might indicate what the next leaf will look like. Okay, so another good one is the Philodendron Painted Lady. So I like this one because the variegation is really unique and striking, but it's not prone to producing big variegated patches that are eventually going to just brown away. And it's one of those like thick, shiny leaved philodendrons that you just don't really have to keep in super high humidity or really high light. I will say the more light you give this plant, the more yellow these leaves are gonna be. So something to think about. And it's got pink petioles, so that's fun. But this one is really easy going. This is one of my all-time favorite plants. And the variegation is a little bit more stable, so it won't, like I said, it's not gonna produce like huge variegated patches or big green patches. It's just kind of mottled all throughout the leaf. I mean, if you're gonna put this in really low light, it's probably not going to produce as much variegation, but I mean, that's a good lesson to learn with plants anyway. So, Philodendron Painted Lady. So this one's gonna be hard to show kind of, but this is a Philodendron Billiesier. I forgot the name for a second. I have found this to be a very easy plant. It is too big for me to put in the frame. So it has these orange petioles and these nice big shiny leaves with these lobes. I love this plant. It's one of my all-time favorites. But so a philodendron with like the thicker shiny leaves like that. So I mean, kind of like these two, they're usually a little bit more easygoing than like the velvety ones. So you probably wouldn't have to keep them in really high humidity. And if that's what you're looking for, those kind of philodendrons are really great. So like the Billiesier, Painted Lady, Dark Lord, Atabapoense, what else? Mexicanum. Those are all really good just to keep around your house as decoration, and they're not really difficult to deal with. They really make a statement without causing you too much trouble along the way. So, I mean, if you're looking at plants, if you see that the plant you're looking at has like a thicker, more shiny leaf, usually that's a good indicator of that. But I mean, like with any plant that you're thinking about buying, just do some research, see what people are saying about it, whether or not it's something that you would be able to provide the conditions for or not. I think those are usually a little bit more easygoing than the really velvety philodendrons, and I have a couple of those that I'm gonna show next. Ah! Okay, this is not a very safe moss pull. So the next one is the Philodendron Splendid. This is a hybrid of Philodendron Burlmarks and Melanochrysum. So both of those, the Burlmarks and Melanochrysum, I would say are not very good plants for a beginner. They can be really finicky, but hybridize them, and this one's really easygoing, and I don't understand that, but this one's really easygoing. I have had this just in ambient room humidity its whole life, so, and it still produces leaves. Every once in a while one will have trouble unfurling, but for the most part it really doesn't, and this color is just really, really pretty. So that is the Philodendron Splendid. Okay, so the next velvety philodendron that's pretty easygoing is the Philodendron Gloriosum, and this is a really awkward pot to try and be showing. I think this plant is just very classic looking, and it's not difficult to care for either. I don't have this in super high humidity. I will say that when you don't, it is probably going to produce a lot of extra floral nectaries. So if you can see like what looks like those little water droplets on the back of the leaf. I hope you can see them. If I could see the viewfinder, that would help. But they're sticky and they will produce that more readily when they're not in really like greenhouse type conditions, which not all of us have. So, and let me see. I am fixing to lose an older leaf here, but that's fine. I'm just gonna let it fall off naturally. So yeah, this one is pretty easy to find nowadays if you go to the right nurseries. And then they're pretty easy to find online too, and they ship really well in my experience with the ones that I have shipped. Yeah, I would definitely invest in a Philodendron Gloriosum. You can't go wrong. And these can get huge too. I've seen just some massive ones that I think people have just grown in room conditions. So definitely consider a Philodendron Gloriosum. And I have one more philodendron on this list, and I wanted to include a variegated philodendron, and I know some people may disagree with me on this one, but that's the variegated Philodendron Burlmarks. I think the variegation on this is really, really cool, and they're not terribly expensive, and I didn't pick a very good one to show, but the reason I think this would be a good plant for a beginner is it's easy to see how the variegation travels through the plant. So it's easy to figure out what to cut off of the plant and what not to when you're trying to maintain variegation. It does, I will say, they do revert pretty easily. So you have to go in and kind of just make sure you're cutting off the all green leaves if that's what you're trying to avoid. But I think that that is a good way to learn how the variegation works and what to do to preserve it. They're pretty hardy, they ship well. I don't have anything bad to say about a variegated Philodendron Burlmarks other than that they can revert pretty easily. But I mean, you just have to keep an eye on it, and you can definitely figure out a way to preserve the variegation by cutting off the green leaves. Okay, so the next plant on my list is an anthurium, and that is the Anthurium Forgetty Eye. Here's the newest leaf I got. This one has transitioned pretty well into room humidity, and this I think is my easiest anthurium that I have ever had. Also, so that's one of the reasons it's my favorite, but it's just so cute with the little round sinus. I have given one of these to my mom, and she has had an easy time trying to take care of it and getting nice looking leaves. But a lot of anthuriums kind of tend to throw a fit when they don't have their ideal conditions. So this one kind of has, but this is also the oldest leaf. But it doesn't do this a ton, especially for just being in regular room conditions. So this lived in an IKEA greenhouse for probably like a year and a half, and I suddenly moved it out, and it's really just been the oldest leaves that did this, and the new leaves have come out, I would say, pretty okay, all things considered. So this one is a little bit odd, but if you're looking for an anthurium to keep in just room conditions, this is a really good one. I know a lot of people recommend the crystallinum or the clarinervium for that. I haven't had luck with either of those two. I can't move my crystallinum out of a greenhouse or it panics, so that is that. And I've killed a lot of clarinervium. I don't know what it is about those, but the Forgetty Eye is a lot more easygoing than either of those two, and I think it's prettier, so you can't go wrong. Okay, so the next two I'm gonna show are Hoyas. I don't have a lot of like really uncommon Hoyas. I really like Hoyas, but I just can't get as into them as I have gotten with aroids. So this one is pretty easy. This is the Hoya Polynura, and I've cut this plant up a ton, so it doesn't look its best right now. But it looks like little fish tails. So that's really fun and unique, and I have found this to be pretty easy and fast growing, and you don't have to keep it in a greenhouse. If you just keep it, I actually find that it does better outside of a greenhouse. So Hoya Polynura, and I know there's variegated forms of it. I've not ever tried any of those. Just the regular green Polynura is the one that I have and love. Okay, so the last Hoya is the Hoya Callistophyla, and mine is a little bit more yellow than I see a lot of them looking, but I keep it out in a greenhouse, so it gets pretty high light, and I think that is why it gets that color more so than the green. But this one's really easy going. It blooms really easily. I have brought this back from the dead a couple of times because I forgot about it. But yeah, I've grown this back from what I thought wouldn't come back several times. So they're pretty resilient. And they look, I mean, they're just really cool plants. What else can I say? They're like veiny and have big leaves. I've seen some of them get huge leaves, and you can grow them trailing or on a trellis. For me anyway, they don't get too fussy with me, but they still look really cool. Okay, so those are a few plants that I think are good to start with if you're looking to get into more uncommon plants. Like I said, prices vary on things depending on where you are, when it is. So this isn't really based on price. And if you're looking to buy a plant and get into more uncommon plants, start with something that you would be comfortable losing that amount of money, because plants are living things and things happen. I mean, you might forget to water it, it might die in shipping, you never know. So pick a plant that you would be comfortable losing the cost of. So don't buy and I'm not gonna give any dollar amounts because everyone's budget is very different. Everyone is in a different place in their lives. So what might seem like a lot to me may not seem like a lot to you, and vice versa. So just figure that out based on your own calculations and life, not what everyone else is telling you. And also try to find the best plant for your money, not necessarily just the cheapest thing you can find, but I mean like a bigger, more robust plant for that price, rather than just, I mean, if you're gonna try and buy an unrooted cutting because it's cheaper, that often doesn't work out in your favor. I mean, unless you're buying it locally, it's your call, whatever you want to do. I personally like I'm definitely willing to spend more money on an established plant from a reputable seller, more so than I am getting the cheapest price possible for maybe like a cutting off of Facebook. And I've had great experiences buying cuttings off of Facebook too, but just starting with a good quality plant is probably the best way to have a good experience growing your plant. And always pick plants that you can provide good conditions for. So these plants I find to be easygoing in my conditions, but it varies for everyone. I'm having trouble speaking today. I think it's because I'm so hot. So yeah, that's gonna conclude my list. Oh, you know what? I was gonna mention a few plants that I don't think are good to start with. So one is the Philodendron Melanochryzum. They are really just prone to getting like the leaves not unfurling properly, and they look kind of deformed, and they can be hard to size up, so people can get really easily frustrated with them. So I wouldn't start out with that one, even if they may be a little bit cheaper than some of these. Philodendron Verde. That one reverts so easily, and it is honestly a mystery to me as to what conditions you might need to provide to produce good variegation. I know people have done it, but I think a majority of people do not see the type of variegation and results that they are wanting from that plant when they purchase it. Another tricky one that beginners I think tend to gravitate toward is the Monstera Thai Constellation, because it has stable variegation and it's a little bit cheaper, I think, than the Elbow. Okay, so it is actually one of my favorite plants that I own, but it's pretty tricky and it does not grow as quickly. So you may end up being a little bit more disappointed with it if you're looking for something that's gonna grow really fast, or you think is gonna produce a lot of variegation because it's more stable. I would stay away from that one in the beginning. Don't get me wrong, it's one of my favorite plants and I definitely recommend it, but as a beginner, I think I would have not been happy with it, and just plants in general. Another one is the Anthurium Warraquianum. That one can be a little bit finicky and it really does not care for shipping either, so I would stay away from that one as a beginner. I of course recommend the Forgetty Eye, but also try the Crystallinum and Clarinervium. A lot of people say that those are really good for beginners and to have in ambient room humidity. Just because I don't have good luck with it doesn't mean that you won't. A lot of people really do. So another one I don't recommend is the Philodendron Florida Ghost. It's an easy plant to deal with, but the coloring can be kind of confusing for people. So it'll come out white and then turn to green. And sometimes if it doesn't turn to green, the leaf might just fall off, or sometimes the leaf will just come out green, and it's just something that varies quite a bit over the life of the plant. So it's not guaranteed. So if it doesn't produce a white leaf that stays white, you can't really be disappointed. It is what it is on that plant. So that's why I don't recommend that one unless you are understanding of that and willing to take the leaves that you get, I guess. And I mean, just anything that's really expensive, I don't think is a good thing to start with, because it's going to be more upsetting if you do end up using that plant as a lesson, you know? Okay, so those are all of the plants, all of the rare uncommon plants that I recommend to beginners. And yeah, like I said, they may not be rare or uncommon to you, but in the area that I live in and recommended for beginners, these are my top choices. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know some of your recommendations in the comments below, or if you have any of these plants. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe and follow me on Instagram at Queen City Tropicals, and I will see you again soon.